Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. The green-faced menace known as Big Head is no stranger to the DC Universe, since he possessed the Joker a while back. But he also crossed paths with someone else from that reality. Not necessarily a villain, but by no means a hero. I'm taking issue with Lobo / The Mask, written by John Arcudi and Alan Grant, with art by Doug Mahnke, Keith Williams, and Francesco Ponzi. Let's begin with Book 1 and see if this story makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. The cover features our stars right up in each other's faces, with the Mask not minding the knife at his throat as he plugs Lobo's gun with his finger and similarly threatens him with a banana. He was the first one to discover that potassium is basically Zarnian kryptonite. We begin at night in New York City with a man named Ira Staub, a petty crook that figures he can score some eatin' money by pulling a knife on an old lady, who happens to be packing heat.
Do you want to see the holster I needed, Sonny? It's 100% wool.
As this brandishing of a badge would suggest, this is actually an undercover cop, so Ira makes a run for it. Not much later, the lieutenant has lost sight of the perp, since he's wearing heels and all that, and calls in for some backup. Not too much, since he couldn't have gotten far and isn't even armed. But he doesn't notice Ira hiding in the alley behind him, and a distinctive mask among the garbage he's sitting in. We then jump back in time and space on the following page, in a scene with unusual spires, a green sky, and a nearby ringed planet. Yesterday. Definitely not Manhattan. Yeah, looks more like Hoboken if you ask me. Chairman Musgrove asks if the individual before him is indeed the one he sent for, with some underlings confirming as much after all manner of identification. And the guest himself belches that yes, he is indeed the one and only Lobo, who's only here because he was told this was a party and is wondering where all the girls are at.
Hula girls! Hula girls! Hula girls!
He's corrected that there are no such festivities, which automatically ticks him off, and he's shown an image of what appears to be a wielder of the mask, with pointier teeth than usual, who has blighted civilizations across the galaxy, plundering worlds, destroying governments, annihilating entire star fleets, credentials enough to humble the main man. Musgrove and his consortium represent worlds affected by this terrorist and want Lobo to bring him in. But he refuses. He doesn't get a lot of time off and is serious about his vacation, but we'll get back to them after a couple of weeks, provided they're still alive. As he punches one of the guards for lying about the party, he's stopped in his tracks upon hearing the bounty is 1 billion credits.
Specifically, store credits at the Pottery Barn.
Back on Earth, Ira figures the cop must be gone, and opines to himself how unfair it seems that the police can ignore the rules of law and order to prevent him from making a living. You know, a living of threatening senior citizens with deadly weapons. I get this is all part of the book's humor, but his lack of irony makes me want to smack him with this. Just saying, critiques of police conduct are valid, unless they're coming from a dude with no qualms about assaulting the elderly. I digress. He spots the mask and figures it might fetch him a good $50 from a fence he knows. Not sure why they decided to add the 0 cents in his inner monologue, but I digress again. Just as he's thinking fate had him ducked into this alley, he walks out to see a squad of monstrous alien warriors, having followed the psychopath's heat trail to that specific location. You wouldn't think that aliens from across the galaxy would speak English, but there you have it.
You speak Groot?
Yes, the total on Asgard. It was an elective.
They open fire and Ira jumps out of the way, narrowly avoiding the blasts as the lead alien mentions tracking him down without the assistance their elders were intending, meaning Lobo, and he should prepare for oblivion. Staub doesn't think that these are cops in disguise, not with the way they talk, unless they're from L.A., when the inside of his find begins to glow. This apparently encourages him to put it on, as in a flash of green light, Big Head is reborn, with a big freaking flail and a series of colorful insults as he asks which of his pursuers wants to be the first to see his colon from the inside.
Well, I do have that colonoscopy scheduled next week, and it'd save me a trip. Wait a minute.
Musgrove tells Lobo about the security detail sent to track his target, with their latest transmission originating from the Terran system, and hands him the disk with the coordinates. utilizing the latest 1992 technology. But the Zarnian is daydreaming about what he could get with 1,000,000,000 creds. Weapons, parts for his space bike, a waterbed filled with expensive booze, even his own island. Stirred from his pondering, he takes the card, claiming he was strategizing, and blasts off to reel in the bounty, telling the now charred Musgrove to start counting his money. Despite his appearance, this guy's been polite, eloquently spoken, and totally calm despite Lobo's brutish and rude behavior. He must be from Space Canada. The security team thinks this mask is less threatening than their target, and after shape-changing into such intimidating figures as Batman, a devil, and someone from immigration, he wallops one of them with his flail. They shoot at him, and while leaving him punched with holes, it doesn't stop him from conjuring a gun that shoots guns.
What are you drawing? A robot with guns for arms, shooting a plane made out of guns that fires guns?
The group is summarily taken out, leaving only the de facto leader left to hurl some insults and try a last-ditch attack. That gets him eaten by Big Head, with the inside of his mouth featuring a stereotypical generic savage caricature, lighting a fire to cook the alien in a large stew. I think you got some Ace Ventura 2 in your mask here. The undercover cop, Lieutenant Ermoff, which feels like it's a parody of someone's name, is calling in backup because of some car trouble.
No, I'm not drunk. Some kind of flying saucer landed on top of my backup car.
If you were drunk, that might excuse your terrible vision and inability to discern shapes. Lobo arrives, figuring the craft belongs to the guys tracking his target, and asks the granny about its owners. Startled by the alien freak, the lieutenant pulls his gun on him, so is thrown at the windshield of an approaching squad car. The officers get out and tell the bounty hunter to freeze, and yeah, you can see where this is going. He lobs a grenade that blows up, taking out the officers. Gonna be honest, not a big fan of this new take on the Cuban Pete scene from the original Jim Carrey movie. Lobo will have to rely on himself to spot anything unearthly, like the space bug guy that falls out of the alley, whose last words are begging for help. The Zarnian spots Big Head in the alley, brushing his teeth, and we get a 2-page spread as he launches himself at the scrawny geek, now resembling a boxer. Narration dramatically opines on the appropriate setting of the bout, and we jump to Mask humbly typing said narration, laced with absurd humor, and even the sound effects of the typewriter getting in on the gag. Lobo interrupts to continue their fight, maybe because he says it's going pretty good instead of going pretty well. I don't know, the biker likes dolphins, he could be a grammar snob too. You don't know, you're not science. We go to a movie theater at intermission, with the two leads far chummier with each other, and Mask is in his dress purples. They grab some drinks, assault other patrons, especially those that call them out for their brutish behavior, which leads to a larger brawl where other guests are fighting each other for some reason, and perhaps that's why the stars are the only ones returning to the theater with some snacks. Lobo can't remember what the story's about, but his green compatriot assures him it's likely catered for guys like them, then asks if there'll be any naked women. There aren't, but there is a page of recap as the story resumes, where the two break the fourth wall and mutilate each other while summarizing what's happened so far, halfway through the first part of a 2-part story. Maybe they were anticipating the shortened attention spans of the 2020s. I'm not kidding, data suggests it's more difficult for younger generations to keep focused these days. I blame fake journalists, grifters, and that squirrel in the backyard that won't stop laughing at me! They even include the book's editor, Dan Raspler, who looks an awful lot like Dietrich Bader, warning about the lack of a story and ensuing gratuitous violence before he too gets horrifically attacked. Returning to the actual fight, the combatants are in a dust devil of visceral hacking, slashing, flying organs, and Mask copying everything Lobo's saying like an annoying sibling.
Rubber man, huh?
Ask him if he plans on finding Gold Roger's treasure and becoming king of the pirates. The bounty hunter then starts a murder-themed parody of 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, but throttling his target isn't doing much good, as his neck just stretches out like an accordion. No problem, he lassos Big Head's neck around the bumper of a passing taxi, chains his leg to a post, and, showing he's not a completely brainless bruiser, does the math in his head to anticipate when his leg finally snaps. He seems pleased with himself, at the easiest money he's ever made.
Them aliens must have crud for brains, paying out 1 billion smackaroonies for Mr. Less Than Fan-Fraggantastic.
Hey, how'd a critic's review of Josh Trank's Fantastic Four make it into this comic? This feels like very premature celebration, since all he did was sever the guy's foot and still has to collect the rest of him, at least trail the cab to confirm he bled out or something. Or maybe not, since Mask starts to regrow from his foot, and while stomping him does leave a gooey red mess on his boot, when he lights a match to smoke a space stogie, the viscera ignites, and Mask emerges with a heavily armed cab, opening fire and leading to an air battle as Lobo rides his hog to counter. One might wonder, as Mr. Raspler the editor does, this is comics, so of course he got better, where are the superheroes to stop these lunatics from reducing New York to ashes? Turns out they're all rushing off to attend to other matters like a wedding, surgery, a dry cleaners, as their silhouettes pass by. When Dan mocks them for calling themselves heroes, they hit him with their various iconic weapons. Not the Dan the editor I would want to smack with a batarang, but hey, Flashpoint didn't happen yet. After a game of chicken sees the Mask swerve, but only so Lobo would crash into a delivery truck, the latter is done going easy. They both start building up speed by circling the Earth and beeline for each other again, though now each wielding explosives. They collide in a massive detonation and fall back to terra firma. Mask impaled on a radio tower, and Lobo falling through the building it's on, while a tour is going on inside, guided by a red-headed woman in a red suit. Huh, Cerebellum got a haircut. I preferred it longer, but hey, she's making it work. After crashing to the lobby and assaulting the desk clerk, of course, Lobo laments having to climb all the way up to grab the body, but is motivated by imagining the women, booze, guns, and more that'll be his with that billion. After scaling to a certain height, he's grabbed by an enormous green gorilla, narrating about being stuck in an ape's body for centuries, going insane, missing the jungle, and longing for someone to talk to. That's not the Mask. Beast Boy accidentally mixed Xanax with Red Bull. Apehead tosses the main man into his maw, eating him alive and roaring in triumph, until his innie becomes an Audi, an all-the-way Audi, with the Zarnian cutting himself free of the giant gullet. There are panels I'm leaving out because they are pretty graphic. He left behind 2 mini-nukes on a 10-second fuse, which would be enough time for him to get away, were his limbs not chewed off, so when the bombs go off, both of them are reduced to nothing more than their heads on the street. They manage to use their tongues to fight each other, knife against bone, until both break. Lobo's more than annoyed that his quarry won't die easy, and now has to wait for his body to regrow. They trade foul-sounding but mostly safe insults at each other.
Nobody says that to me, you foul-mouthed fraggin' phoebe!
Separating sore features, fart brain, cutesy boy!
Cutesy boy!
Ooh, Mask just predicted New 52, Lobo. Big Head, being a living Tex Avery cartoon, instantly makes himself good as new, wearing a graduation gown as he takes Lobo's dialogue from previous pages, shoves them down a funnel so he can eat his words, then kicks him into the distance. He soon finds the bounty hunter in the street, and says he may not be the ultimate Bastich he's looking for. He reveals he's a Mask, and that his current wearer is not a great guy, but far from the villain that did the things that warranted the bounty. His previous owner, however, is the one Lobo must want. After a long enough time has passed for the main man to get a new body, and new clothes apparently, unless they grew along with him, Lobo offers 20% of the reward in exchange for the location of his old face, once he's been taken out. But since Big Head claims the guy is so tough the bounty hunter will need some assistance, he'll go along to help in the fragging for a mere 10% cut. They shake hands on it and walk along the streets of the city they destroyed, each internally calling the other chump and having vandalized each other's backs. This is probably quite similar to the way David Zaslav got promoted. Afterwards is an interview with the writers and one of the artists, which, much like the book itself, is all more of a joke, and the humor continues on the back cover, which sees the opponents turned partners bust out laughing below some quotes, like Paul Levitz's certainty that this will ruin DC, John Wilkes Booth preferring Our American Cousin, and a thumbs up from Satan. I'm pretty sure that's also how Batman and Robin Eternal got greenlit. we've seen our stars go from predator and prey to bounty hunting buddies, so tune in next week to see how this alien biker and oddball immortal track this mysterious former owner and the various space convenience stores they probably stop at to buy pork rinds along the way. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.